Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Not Too Comic Book. This being a show where I talk about TV shows that are adaptations of comic books. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of Riverdale as well as the latest episode of Stumptown. Like always, if I'm talking about something you want to listen to, you can always look in the description down below. I click the time when I start talking about each of the respective shows. So, for example, if you don't want to hear what I say about this week's episode of Riverdale, you can skip to what I say about this week's episode of Stumptown. But the first thing I'm going to talk about is this week's episode of Riverdale. A great episode, a lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. Well, I like that we have basically obviously, like a lot of our main characters on Riverdale have a lot of psychological issues, and I like that a lot of this episode, basically the entire episode, was basically tackling that, a combination of the psychological issues that they're having, this within themselves, but also just like the stuff that's going down in their lives that's kind of affected them. I like that because we have the perspective of counselor, what's her name? Blurble, who is played by Gina Torres. I was like, holy shit, it's Gina Torres. Obviously, most recently, obviously from Suits and the spin-off of Suits, Pearson. But I kind of started thinking about it. I think the first thing I ever saw her in was Angel. Because she played Cordelia's daughter. It wasn't Angel's son named Vincent. I think that was. It's been a while since I've seen Angel, but it was like Cordelia and Vincent had a son. Like obviously, you remember that whole story. Not son. I mean, a daughter, but they had a whole. It was a whole storyline, but like I think that was the first thing I ever saw Gina Torres in. So I was just like, oh, it's that. That's so cool. It's interesting because they made reference to something else. I guess the name Cordelia came up into my mind. I was like, oh, that's interesting. Maybe that wasn't meant to be what it was, but in my head I made that connection. Regardless, like, because I'm going on a bit of a tangent, but nevertheless, I'm gonna break this down obviously by person to person. Obviously, first up, let's start off with Betty. Betty's talking to Blurble because she's dealing with the whole situation. Well, she didn't get into Yale like she wanted to. Plus, her mom's also invading her privacy and stuff like that, which are kind of, even I was like, whoa, come on, Alice, all the stuff you've been keeping secret and stuff like that. But then, like, I love that Betty kind of went off because it's like, really, Mom? Everything that's happened, literally going from top to bottom, the whole sending Polly to the Sisters of Quiet Mercy, the whole, you had another son. Obviously, I thought I killed that son, but that son is the one you've been secretly working with the entire time when you were working with the FBI, because you were secretly undercover with this cult and everything. But it's not just that. Literally everything. It's like, when you actually think about it in the grand scheme of things, it's like, man, when Betty lined up everything, you're like, bam, 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 back to back like that. You're like, ooh, that's a lot of kind of knocks against Alice. But the thing is, Alice is, being very strict and overprotective, because it's like, oh, you're having sex and stuff like that. You should be focused on your grades. She's like, why would I'm doing with my boyfriend such a big issue with you? The fact of the matter is, it's like you're nitpicking over such a certain thing. And it's like, the fact of the matter is, at least I'm using protection. We're not being stupid. Like, what about you and Polly? You both had kids at such a young age. And I'm not trying to be in that position. But, and I think... And I really liked it, even though it kind of started off like that, there was some healing involved, because I appreciated the whole circumstance, especially because, it's like, understanding why she does what she does, because she's like, because I love you. It's like, I get it, Mom, you love me, but that's not an apology. That's not an excuse. The fact of the matter is, why are you doing this to me? Hell, you have another daughter who needs your help, Polly. Why don't you do this to her? Why are you so consumed by me? Because I love you. But it's like, what about Polly? It's like, because I love you more. I was like, ooh. Because for one, as a mother, as a parent, not just a mother, but just a parent in general, you're not supposed to pick favorites. But obviously, like, Betty is her favorite. Because for her, it's like, she looks at Betty, like, because I didn't even love that Blurble was kind of bringing up the fact is that basically in Alice's mind, she's doing all this stuff. Even though she was with the farm and everything, she gave away Betty's college fund, which I was like, right, I forgot about that. And then it's like, oh, and it turned, and even Alice was like, well, that's when I was controlled by the farm. I was like, oh, so you were really sucked in. It's not like you've been, I think I was under the impression like, oh, everything she did was because she was undercover. It's like, oh no, it took a while before Charles got her and pulled her, probably deprogrammed her a little bit, and then had her be like his insider with the whole Edgar situation. But I was like, man, that's nuts to kind of think about. Like, but the thing is, like, yeah, your mom did give away. I forgot about that because they never brought it up again, and I was like, oh. I just kind of chalked that up, being like, oh yeah, that was just part of that. But it's like, no, your mom actually did that. I was like, but like, she's saying like, oh, that Alice probably did that subconsciously because she's trying to keep Betty, she's afraid of Betty leaving her because what happened with Charles, what happened with Polly, she's afraid because like the only person in this world she has left, outside of FP, but just amongst her family is Betty, and she's afraid of losing because like Betty goes off to college and everything. Then she's still holding on to Betty as like, oh, you're my little girl. And I think no matter what the circumstances are, Betty's always going to be your little girl, but you can't treat her like one. Betty's like, I am an adult, I can make my own decisions. I mean, hell, when you look at all the stuff that her and everyone else has had to deal with over the course of the series, these are some adult things. So it's like they've had to grow up faster than any other normal teenager. I think literally every teenager in Riverdale had to grow up so much faster. Not even just this group of teenagers, like even looking at the Midnight Club situation, like they had to grow up much faster too. But you get what I'm trying to say. So it's like Riverdale doesn't present itself as a place to really just have a normal childhood or like even adolescence, because Riverdale just has its dark secrets and dark aspects. So, but regardless, I'm going on a tangent. But I just thought that was kind of a neat element. And obviously, even hearing herself be like, "I love you more," it made Alice kind of go, "Oh my God!" Like, because I think it made her realize like I am doing all of this stuff. Whether she really realized it or not. But I think also hearing like, oh, I love you more kind of makes her feel bad about like her saying that, because once again, it's almost like picking your favorite amongst your children, even though you're not supposed to do that. I guarantee you, like, every parent subconsciously has their favorite. I'm sure my parents literally bounce between me and my two sisters all the time. Like, I'm too pessimistic to even think like, yeah, I'm not their favorite. Like, I'm too pessimistic to even think that, so I'm not even going to be like, oh, I bet I'm the favorite. I would never think that. I don't have that high enough opinion of myself. That got a little depressing, but regardless, I thought that was just kind of a neat moment because, like I said, there was just so much there buried underneath that they hadn't really talked about. But I think this was some big steps towards fixing a lot of that. And even at the end, you see that Alice is, kind of respecting her privacy more. It's like, hey, here's some mail for you. I didn't open it this time. The fact of the matter is, I am trying to give you your space. The fact of the matter is, I'm trying not to hold on as tight, So that is taking its steps. And I was like, oh, that's neat. So next up, we have Archie, which Archie's definitely got a lot of stuff he's dealing with, because obviously he's falling asleep in class. Apparently he's having a hard time sleeping because for him, he's been through, obviously, like, this has been a rough amount, like, couple months for Archie. He lost his dad. He's opening this center, and the fact of the matter is, like, what's recently happened, his mom, like, a drive-by at their house, then the whole thing at Thanksgiving's, it's like the whole thing of, like, Archie is, like, he's falling apart because for him, he blames himself because he's like, I'm trying to do the right thing, because he feels obligated to do more, because, like, if my dad was here, he'd be doing more. Because the thing is, Archie isn't even taking over his dad's business. Because even Burble was like, oh, you're going to be taking over your dad's operation, so that's why you're not going to college. He's like, no, because he's so focused on the center. It's like, that's got to be his top priority. Because for him, it's like, it's a combination of trying to live up to this expectation he has of himself that he think maybe his dad would. His dad would be proud of him to do anything. But I think Archie just feels this over need to succeed, and because he kind of is basically carrying the weight of that entire town on his back. It's not something that he has to carry alone, but he's kind of putting himself in that position to carry it alone. The fact of the matter is, like, him running the center, but also doing this vigilante thing, which she's trying to tell him, it's like, well, the fact of the matter is, based on those characters you like and stuff like that, vigilantes, who's looking out for them? He's like, I don't know what she's like, the fact of the matter is, who's looking after their well-being? Like, the fact of the matter is, because for Archie, it's like, I'm doing more harm than good, because me doing this vigilante thing, which I'm trying to help out, but all I'm doing is putting the people I care about most in danger. In particular, he put his mom in danger. He put a target on their back. If it was on him, that's one thing, but other people are getting dragged into his mess too, and that's got him stressed out and worried. And Blurble was saying that basically all of this is a byproduct of anger, because everything you're doing is driven by anger, because you're still grieving over the loss of your father. And Archie's like, yes, I'm angry. You think I'm stupid? I recognize that I'm angry. I'm angry, and he was saying, like, sad. It's all there, bubbled beneath Archie, and it's just kind of like, what am I supposed what else can I do? Like, he's trying to take all that anger and use it as motivation, but it's still there. And it's just like the whole, like, vigilante thing. It's almost probably like it's you're trying to do good, but also I think you're trying to alleviate some of that anger you have inside. But Blurble had given him this approach of like, don't go down the route you're going, like the whole vigilante thing. Find a different way. Focusing on the center itself, that is how you kind of get rid of that anger. That's how you better everything. Because obviously going down the vigilante route isn't going to help. The fact of the matter is what you need to do is open up a line for everyone to be able to call you anonymously about tips. Like handling that side of things, that in the long run is going to be what helps Riverdale, not you doing your vigilante thing, because obviously there'll be, consequences for that. And so Archie takes that, he moves it out. His mom's obviously worried, but for him it's like, I don't want you to have a target in your back. So it's like, I'm gonna be okay. I'm gonna be moving into the center. I'm gonna be staying there. The fact is he opens up a phone line, but we do see this thing at the end where it's like, okay, the question is whether or not Archie's fully, I mean, to be fair, even like Blurbo had said, like, I forgot, it wasn't probably necessarily with Archie, but probably just, I think it was what she says to Jughead. But maybe I want to say it might have been to Jughead, but the fact is that no matter what, all this isn't going to be resolved immediately. She doesn't expect immediate results, but regardless, I thought it was pretty neat. But I thought it was interesting that the fact is that he still takes the hood at the end because he gets a call to help someone out, and he gets the bat. So I think when he gets there, it's going to be the question of like, okay, so how are you going to handle this? Because the whole point was to kind of like gather some information and then get that to the authorities, but he still feels that need of like the authorities aren't going to do what they need to. They're never going to have the evidence they need to. So he doesn't put the mask on immediately, but he does carry it with him. So maybe he takes a bat, but he's going out to do something about it himself. But maybe it's just him approaching this a little differently. Maybe he's keeping it there, but maybe when the time comes, he will still kind of put on a mask. Maybe maybe it's supposed to show like Archie still finds himself in a little bit of that cycle. We'll see whether he kind of breaks it going forward, but this might be something where it's like, no, that's still cemented, that he needs to kind of still fix that. Or maybe it's just him slowly waning off of it. Like he's carrying it with him, but he doesn't actually, wear it. He does try to handle it as Archie and not, this vigilante. So, like I said, we'll see on that front. Then another side of things is Cheryl, which I felt so bad because that Principal Honey, it's like, oh yeah, like you've missed so much school. And she's like, did you miss literally everything I've been through recently? I'm entitled to miss a little school, like just because of, the fact that she's literally helping raise two twins. Plus, she's the only caretaker that's, there for her grandmother, Nana Rose and everything. And he's like, well, I'll give someone else to look over the Vixens, which I'm kind of like, that's a little messed up. And it almost seems like, I don't know, the look on your face didn't seem like a concerned person. It would just seem more like, he looks so pragmatic about it. He didn't just like, I mean, to be fair, he's here to be pragmatic because it's like, oh, Weatherby let a lot of stuff slide. He's like, I'm not going to be like that. The fact of the matter is, I'm going to whip this school into shape. But it just almost seemed like he did it just to spite Cheryl because she is the one that kind of pushes back the most against him. So that's why I'm kind of like, I don't know. We'll see. Like, there's animosity between those two. But regardless, Cheryl ends up talking to Blurble, and so obviously there's a lot of underlining stuff for Cheryl since literally the beginning and it's like, oh, have you talked to anyone? Which she's like, no. Like the fact is she's quickly shutting down, like, it's like, oh, don't talk. I'm not, it's like, oh, I'm this, I got 4.0, I have great hair. Yeah, that's all you need to know about me. Because Cheryl has never been in therapy. It's like, you've been through so much. Like the fact of the matter is your twin was murdered, especially because you later on found out your twin brother was murdered by none other than your dad. It's like, but Cheryl has kind of dealt with all her pain and everything that she's going through. But like Blurble was like, well, your brother's murder, your father's suicide, the whole situation with you falling beneath the ice. Which she was quickly like, no, that was an accident. Because I think she quickly didn't want to make it. Because the whole point was like, oh, if Ms. Blurble says that you're not mentally, able to, like, I'm not going to give the Vixens back to you. So she was quickly trying to be like, no, I wasn't trying to commit suicide or anything, because she felt like that would make her seem unstable. But it's like, it's that being a part of Edgar's, organ harvesting cult, and all of that, plus her mom's abuse, for like, we saw a lot of that. So it's like all of that, plus like everything else. It's like, well, I'm talking to my brother. And I did like the fact is, I was almost waiting for the twist, because I'm like, Blurble is kind of getting a lot of dark shit out of people, and I'm like, she's not meant to tell other people's business, because there is confidentiality there, unless it's like you're going to hurt yourself or someone else, with the exception of those circumstances. But I was almost thinking, well, we'll see, because this might tie into that whole Watcher thing because we got more videos this episode, and they're closer and closer to the houses this time. So she might be connected to that. Maybe not. Maybe she is. It's just interesting because this has never come up before, this counselor angle, and all of a sudden now in season 4 we're getting that. I mean, granted, all the characters have built up a good lot of psychological problems that needed to be dealt with. Still, I'm just curious to see if that ends up turning into something, because I just feel personally, I'm just you get Gina Torres, and I just kind of feel I feel like you could have gotten anyone that maybe not someone recognizable, but the fact is she is, it's not I don't know. I treat it the same way of you put Sam Witwer as Chippins, oh, that's going to be an important character. It's kind of like that. I'm yeah, getting Molly Ringwald to be Archie's mom. It's obviously you're going to be seeing his mom from time to time, type of situation, so that's why I kind of get the feeling you get Gina Torres for this. Maybe it's going to be a one-off, maybe not, but I kind of doubt that. So that's why I'm kind of thinking there's going to be some correlation there. Once again, I'm going on a bit of a tangent, but regardless. Circling back to what I was talking about before I went on that huge tangent, was the fact is that Cheryl brought up the whole oh yeah, I talked to my brother. It's oh yeah, prayer, that's good and healthy. It's no, I literally talked to my dead brother's body who's in the chapel. And it's she didn't judge Cheryl. She was actually talking about the fact is she didn't judge her. And I think for Cheryl that probably felt good, because it's that was her biggest fear of telling anyone that someone would judge her. Because hell, I brought that up about Tony too. Tony super didn't judge her, and I was Tony is definitely ride or die. The fact of the matter is she's not willing to kind of that. Most people would run from that, but it's the fact that she accepts that, still loves you. It's yo, Cheryl's got a good one. It's kind of what I was talking about. But regardless, the fact of the matter is the whole, that plus the whole Julian thing, which she starts thinking no, it isn't just, the fact of the matter is you went through some trauma, and the fact is talking to your brother actually helps. So it's not as, she doesn't look at it as a bad thing, but this whole Julian thing of you being haunted is ghosts don't exist. The fact of the matter is I don't actually think you actually absorbed a twin in the womb and everything. There's actually a test that'll allow you to actually test and see if there's two DNAs with your DNA. I was I wonder, is that BS or is that actually a real thing? That's actually kind of interesting. If it's a real thing, I've never heard of that before. But regardless, either way, I think that's kind of a fascinating thing. But regardless, I did like that she was oh, what's the more logical explanation? Someone's screwing with you, which Cheryl does take the test later on, and it's oh, she doesn't have two DNA, so it's only there. But it's oh, what about the whole Julian thing? It's yeah, someone's messing with us, which is okay, so whoever it is, they're going to suffer my wrath, which immediately my brain goes, okay. When you actually piece it together and think about the fact is her family shows up to take over take and sell the maple business. They could have come out of the woodworks at any point in time. But to be fair, Penelope's in the wind, and Penelope could have been the last thing in the way. But part of my brain goes not unless we end up finding out that Nana Rose is behind all this, because she is the one that brought up this whole Julian story. So it's but Nana Rose has been pretty good so far. She exposed a lot of stuff, so it's oh. So you would think there'd be something, but I wouldn't expect Nana Rose to do it. But my mind immediately goes, it's Penelope, isn't it? Penelope's trying, because obviously Penelope psychologically damaged Cheryl a lot. Penelope's not the most well-adjusted human being, as last season kind of, we've known for a while, but last season kind of took the cake of oh, you literally being behind everything. So it's kind of okay, no duh there. But I think that's probably what it was. She's probably trying to get other family members, because she can't do it herself, because she's going to be on the run, because she shows up in Riverdale, her ass is arrested. So it's probably a situation of she's trying to get these other family members to kind of step in and do that, and it's if you do this, I'll give you a cut of it type of situation. So that's what I'm kind of assuming is the deal there, but we'll ultimately have to wait and see whether that be the case. But I'm thinking, logically that'd be kind of the stance to go with her. I actually kind of feel bad too, because at the end of the day, she doesn't get to keep the Vixens, and I think for Cheryl, so much of her life is out of control, and she tries to keep her composure. The only good things in her life was having Tony, and the twins. I think they're good in her life, and her Nana Rose, but so much of other aspects of her life has kind of been screwed up. So it's she needed, I think the Vixens gave her, because for one, it's something that's her own, it's hers, where she kind of reigns supreme. It's something she's always cherished, obviously since the beginning of the series. When we met her, she's Queen Bee and everything. So that was a position she held so sacredly. What I noticed? I just thought about something I haven't thought about in years. Her two besties that were by her side, with the whole Vixen squad, I completely forgot about that. That was something that was only in season 1, wasn't it? I completely forgot about that. Jesus, that just clicked in my head. I was right. She had her personal duo that kind of finished out that trio. I completely forgot about that. I totally forgot about that till now. I mean, to be fair, there's other characters that have popped up over the course of the show who have kind of disappeared, have not been seen like at all in a very, very long time. But I'm sure that's just, it is what it is type of situation. But regardless, I'm going on a bit of a tangent. But it's like, I think for her, it's like I said, that was something she held so close and dear, because we see her kind of breaking down, because like that's something she cherishes. That I think there was almost like one of the, like that was kind of her identity, was with the Vixen. So to have that taken away from her is like losing a part of herself. But she needs the time to kind of fix herself. You know, I don't mean that in like a negative way. I mean like literally, Cheryl's been through a lot of crap that she needs. You know, she needs to deal with and process all that. So there's that. Next up, we get Veronica, who's dealing with the whole complicated thing with her dad. She's trying to get into Harvard, and she gets in and everything, and then she finds out, wait, my dad had to stick his nose in it, so screw that. Which Veronica's talking about the whole complicated situation with her dad, because for her, it's like, you know, the fact is, I don't want anything with him, to do with him. I don't want to be around him. But, you know, Blurble brings up some good points. It's like, you say all that, but you still live with him. And then Veronica never had a really good rebuttal to that. Despite how much you hate your dad, despite all this and that, you still live under the same roof as him. When he calls, you come. You might roll your eyes and be like, whatever, but you don't have to listen to him, but you do. So why? And I love that her thing is like that. Basically, Veronica and her dad have this almost obsessive relationship with each other, because he's obsessed with her, because it's almost like this thing of like, she said it, that basically Hiram sees Veronica as an extension of himself. So all her success is him seeing like, oh, because he sees Veronica as himself, and just a younger version of himself, but also just an extension of him. So that's why he pushes her so hard. But also Veronica, whether she realizes it or not, there's some part of her that wants to be like her dad, that is kind of sucked up into the whole thing of wanting that drive to succeed and stuff. She is the person that she's in the successful business over, the great student, because of the drive she got from her dad. So, you know, her life is almost treading down this road, because it's like your dad kind of laid the paved the road for you. And so Veronica's in that complicated thing of like, well, what do I do? Like, she wants to break the cycle, but she can't 100% break it. Like I said, despite the issues, despite the flare-ups, it's just like kind of like her blowing up towards her dad and her mom, she still won't walk away from her dad. And it's actually kind of sad when you actually think about it, because I think that, because she talked bad about her mom, because it's like, you went back to him. I thought we were done with him. And I think it speaks volumes, interestingly enough, like that affliction, Hermione's going back to Hiram despite everything, that there's a little bit of that with Veronica too. Like, I think that's an aspect of herself that she has to actively fight going forward, is because there's a part of her that is still like, you know, because what did she call him? She calls him daddy, like in the sense that, like, you know, I think even though there's animosity there's still this endearment, there's this love, but she makes it seem like she doesn't love him. And it's like, despite everything, despite him almost killing your boyfriend, sending him to jail, the whole complicatedness that is your dad being the gangster that he is, him drawing you into his world and everything, drawing your boyfriend into this world. Like, even despite all that, like what I've always talked about, like Veronica still, she pushed away yet still, and that's what Blurble was talking about, the fact that you always come back. You want to cut ties completely. Is that what you want, to kind of be free of your dad? Then you need to, you know, because they were making references to like a Greek tragedy, almost like an Oedipus type of thing. There was another one that they were kind of referencing, but basically this whole thing of, you know, killing your parent or something, but it's like not like finding a different route. And Veronica's way of handling this was kind of saying like, I'm going to kill you, but not in the way you would want, because obviously murder is your thing and I never stoop to your low efforts. So I'm not going to Harvard because that's what you would want. And if I go down that route, every step I'd be taking would be a path that you laid out before me, which is like, hey, it'd be fine and dandy of like, yeah, this will be a bright future, but it's a bright future you would pave the way for, that you would make for me if I ever want to make it on my own, you know, because that was another thing. It's like the reason why, like, going to Harvard was her dream, but there's always going to be a part of her that feels like she would never know if she could have gotten there on her own if her dad hadn't interfered, you know? Because at the same time, it's like everything he does isn't necessarily because it's like, oh, because I want what's best for you. I love you. I do this out of love. But it's like, no, it's more out of almost stroking your own ego, because she is an extension of you. Veronica's status is a reflection of your own status. So if she isn't at the top, it's almost like, oh, I'm kind of screwing up. I'm messing up here as a parent. Like, you need to be on my level. So he's trying to keep her on par with himself, which, interesting enough, Veronica's taking that drive to basically challenge her dad of like, I'm going to destroy your business. I'm going to destroy that's how I kill you. I'm going to beat you business for business. I'm going to destroy you business wide, and in a very colorful way, basically saying, kicking his carcass around, like beat you down until there's nothing left, until there's nothing but a carcass, and then still proceeding to kick your ass even more. So very interesting. I also love the final middle finger being the fact that she drank that very special bottle of like, oh yeah, this is a very first bottle of rum I made or whatever, and it's like, she drunk it, and he super pissed him off. So that's definitely going to be an interesting route to see things kind of go down that path. So there's that. Then there's the whole situation with Jughead, which obviously he still hasn't started his writing yet, and obviously DuPont's kind of giving him shit about stuff. So it's like, okay, he goes to back to Riverdale High to kind of get some transcripts so he can I don't think transcripts is the right word. Maybe it is. Basically college stuff. And obviously he's probably like literally every character. Like I said, the only person that was probably the most responsive towards the whole therapy situation was like Betty and Archie to a certain extent, but like everyone else was very kind of resistant to it, especially Jughead. But because Jughead is looking at it as this conspiracy thing about what's going on, which Blurble was kind of like, well, could you be using this as an excuse? He's like, wait, what? And she's like, well, the fact of the matter is, using this almost as like you're using your grandfather's situation almost like an excuse, because it's like, well, you're the kid who's kind of from, the other side of the tracks in this particular situation. And the fact is you're very anti like status and, money and stuff like that. Yeah, it almost seems like there's a part of you that's almost trying to get that. Like you're trying to say that that's not important to you, yet you're trying to claim all these acclaims that you feel like DuPont stole from your grandfather. Because it's also the thing of like, well, your father is the more inspiring story. You're up here trying to trail after this glam and glorious life that could have been your grandfather's, but look at your father's story. The fact of the matter is he came from being poor, coming from dealing with a drunk and abusive father, and look where his life is taking him. He is sheriff. That in itself is an inspiring story that you should appreciate more, right? I mean, because you're looking at your grandfather through rose-tinted glasses that you kind of created for yourself. You're not looking at it from the same view of your father. I mean, your father, he's done everything to kind of, he's very, putting you in that position at the school. And even Jughead was like, well, yeah, he literally pushed for me to go to the school because he wants the best for you. He tries, he's putting his best foot forward so that you could put your best foot forward, And the fact is, it's kind of like you should see your grandfather through the eyes that your father, because like I said, Jughead's been so caught up in this, conspiracy, and, it's almost like this paranoia. It is almost this thing of like him wanting to see conspiracies everywhere, but it's almost like you're kind of almost using it as not an excuse, because psychologically there's a part of you that is worried that you might not be as good of a writer. So you're almost using this almost as some like crutch to procrastinate, essentially. I'm like, that's such an interesting aspect. But the whole for whatever reason, it kind of reminds me of that episode from SpongeBob super early on. The whole they're supposed to write like a 500-page essay Mrs. Puff gives the entire class to do, but SpongeBob kept procrastinating, and then he finally does it, and then it was kind of worthless because the assignment was kind of like it just, for whatever reason, that whole conversation made me think of that episode. I don't know why, that's just what popped in my head. But I just thought that was kind of an interesting thing. So, Blurble was telling him, just do the work. The fact of the matter is, and even with this whole investigation of yours, investigate. Don't just sit here, kind of chomping at the bits of it's like do the work, kind of prove yourself, with your work and, college stuff and all of that. But also when it comes to your investigations, do your work, So I thought that was kind of an interesting aspect because, he was like, you're super underpaid, aren't you? And she's like, yes, super overqualified too. But I even love her being like, it won't make you less smart if you want to admit that I was right. And Jughead was like, yeah, you were right. So it's like, So I thought that was kind of a neat conversation all around and what that means for Jughead, which, he's writing his story of the Baxter book, which immediately Betty's like, oh, it's good, it's keeping true to the story while also doing your own thing. But then we also find out that basically Jughead did some more investigating and finds out that there are other people from the Quill and Bones secret society the only two people that are alive are DuPont as well as Jughead's grandfather, because every other member over these past decades has died under mysterious circumstances. It looks like, are they just coincidental accidents, or is there murder, at play here? So I think that's interesting. And then we get the hard cut at the end where it's like, obviously, Archie, Veronica, and Betty getting arrested, and you have Donna and Brett there, and FP's like, are they the ones who killed Jughead? And he's like, yep, we saw them murder Jughead. Which, okay, so then my conspiracy brain starts going off. Okay, so we know this has to deal with the Quill and Bones situation. I believe this whole thing is a facade. Like, obviously, we all know that this is a huge red herring. My thought is that FP and the kids are in on this. They fake this whole situation and make like Donna and Brett, or probably just the DuPont as well, but just literally everyone with the Quill and Bones thing probably murdered Jughead, or maybe they're making it look like Jughead died when in fact he hadn't. Like, this might be some like long-winded play to kind of get them drawn out, making it seem like, hey, maybe Brett and the Donna, as well as all of the Quill and Bones, put them in a position where they killed Jughead, or maybe there's evidence pointing to them killing Jughead, and they had to cover their tracks by burning everything. But maybe the Quill and Bones think they won, but in fact, and I think this is all going to tie into Jughead's story because he created the perfect murder, right? And that might be the circumstances around his murder. And so because he knows the story so well, he kind of plays into it and fakes his death. Or maybe it's going to be a thing that either Betty, Veronica, and Archie know, or maybe they don't know. Maybe only FP knows, or maybe those trio know and FP doesn't. I don't know. Like I said, my conspiracy brain has literally been running rampant since we saw all of that in season 3's finale. So ultimately, we'll have to wait and see where all of this is going to take us going forward. But these are some very interesting routes. These character stories have kind of been set up. So I'm curious to see where, like I said, it all takes us going forward. And now moving on to this week's episode of Stumptown. A great episode. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. Well, first and foremost, we have Dex getting a job from Sue Lin, who obviously she's talking about these little things here and there that's just kind of like, okay, it seems like this could be a coincidental thing, but she thinks someone's making a personal attack against her. Someone's kind of looking into her business. Basically, she was being like audited or whatever, but she's like, and I think this speaks volumes about her, the fact that she's like, we haven't been looked into for like 20 years. I'm like, you're very good at keeping people away. I guess she pays off the right people, kind of grease the right palms, But regardless, the fact of the matter is that plus some guy approached her, is like, oh, he was just my type, but he was just a little too handsome, and just, Dex is like, yeah, all right, Sulin, sure, whatever. But the fact of the matter is, they go outside because her car exploded. So it's like, okay, so maybe she's not 100% paranoid. Maybe there's some validity to this whole situation. So now she's working with Sulin, which obviously we know because of their history, it makes it a very, very complicated situation. Even more so because she needs to go to the reservation, which the last time she was on the reservation was 12 years ago, Benny's funeral, where his wife, Naomi, had said, if I see you on the reservation again, I will claw your eyes out. Obviously, that was a trip down memory lane that Dex didn't want to. So it's like, if I wasn't necessary to this case, I wouldn't be on the reservation right now. Because it's even something that Gray brings up that I thought was kind of interesting. It's like, you want Sulin to love you, like, because it's like, why would you go through all this considering everything that went down between you and Benny? The biggest problem was Sulin, and now you kind of got ostracized by the tribe and her, that all because of that, like, you couldn't be with the men that you were obviously super in love with. So obviously it's that thing of like, why would you still work for her? Like, obviously, why are you even working for her? It must mean that you want her to kind of love you. You're kind of you're hoping that when it's all said and done, she'll realize she messed up getting in the way of you and Benny, that it more so what happened to Benny was kind of on her. But we'll kind of dive and reconnect to that soon enough. But I never thought it interesting because not everyone on the reservation has an issue with Dex, because she meets up with her buddy Nate, and he's like, it's like, well, I stole her husband from her. And then Nate was like, but she stole Benny from you, because like, even he's like, I guess he's known Dex and Benny for a long time. So for him, it's like, nah, man, you two were a thing. Like, Naomi came in afterwards, which Naomi shows up and she's pissed that, Dex is on the reservation. And I really like I said, I like this slowly but surely we are dealing with a lot of the issues that Dex has. And this means confronting someone from her past, the wife. Because even Nate had brought it up. It's like, yeah, you saved her daughter, which obviously that was the first episode of season one, of the season and everything. And it's like, that should give you some brownie points with her. But it's like, no, it didn't make up for anything because she's still pissed at her. Which obviously Sue Lin seemed like she had issues, but it seemed like over the course of the season, like the bump-ins Dex has had with Sue Lin, it seems like Sue Lin doesn't seem like she holds as much animosity towards Dex, so, but regardless, Dex is obviously kind of, upset about her running with Naomi. Obviously, she knew it was going to happen, but, and it's probably like you can run through all these different scenarios in your head a million different times, but it takes that one confrontation in real life to kind of break her down, because just a reminder of like Benny being gone and like, Naomi saying it was her fault and, saying that it was Dex's fault, which obviously Dex internalizes a lot of that and, blames herself. So she's getting drunk listening to Pearl Jam really loud and everything. And for Dex, it's the whole, because it all stems back from the fact is the reason why her and Benny can never be together is because because it was like she was never accepted into the tribe, because it's a whole thing about staying within the tribe, because, obviously, I'm sure it stems from her being a white lady too. I'm sure it's more so anyone outside of the tribe, but I'm sure her also being a white lady probably doesn't help. That probably complicates the situation even, more so, which kind of makes it seem like her and Benny kind of had a bit of a Romeo and Juliet type of situation going on. But regardless, talking to Hoffman, who talked to Kavanaugh about taking up this case, but it's like, oh yeah, which I even love that little moment between Hoffman and Dex, where it was like, Miles was like, we should keep this very professional, kind of keep it on low. She's like, oh, so I shouldn't bring up, my interrogation fantasy. He's like, I mean, if you want to get into that a little bit. She's like, no, you're right. We need to separate pleasure and, business, and, this is official business, so we need to cut that. He's like, okay, sure, whatever. But we did learn a little bit of interesting information I thought was kind of fascinating, where Miles went to Kavanaugh, but Kavanaugh's like, nah, we got to leave this. Dex has a lot more legal wiggle room as a private investigator than the cops do, because obviously the reservation has different rules, so they can't really kind of investigate the way they want to, so they have to leave it at the Dex. But Miles brings up a good point of an interesting thing of like, what went down between you and Sue Lin? And Kavanaugh was like, yeah, make sure you close the door on your way. I was like, oh, I didn't know there was bad blood between you two. But now later on, there's an instance of kind of showing that we kind of learn what that is, that basically Sue Lin, or at the very least, there must have been something in the past where Sue Lin had basically made a situation that they were investigating go away, because a suspect of kind of like a suspect or whatever must have been in a tribe, and Sue Lin probably came to their defense, probably getting a lot of the case thrown out or whatever, or trying to get them on technicalities so that they couldn't convict them. So it seems like it's probably not, because she said again, so I'm wondering, has this happened one time before, or has this happened multiple times? Hence why Kavanaugh. I mean, I'm sure it also depends on what the crime was specifically. So it seems like Kavanaugh is kind of, because it's Sue Lin because Sue Lin's not, it's like, this is my job, getting bad people arrested. I'm arresting and bringing justice, but I can't do my job when you're able to just kind of skirt the rules and bend them to what you want. So that's kind of what that comes down to. But regardless, so Dex is on a reservation because she figures whoever's behind all of this has to be someone that's coming after her personally, because it turns out that she learned from Nate that Sue Lin, a lot of people like the way she runs things, sure, but there's some people who have issues because there was this logging company that was trying to buy up some of the land, and that would have been more money for the tribe, but she didn't want that because it's like she wants to keep all the money and everything on the reservation to their people. And if you let a logging company in, that means they take some of that. It's like, no. People outside of the tribe have taken enough from us. Let's keep it in-house. So, her turning down that deal, not a lot of people are fans of. So it's like, okay, I know you might not like this, and the fact is you want, like, Dex is like, you're basically making me investigate this with one hand tied behind my back. You came to me because you wanted me to get this job done. I can do it if you give me the freedom to. So she does, and lo and behold, she can't, because of the rules. Outsiders can't walk around on their own. Who ends up getting teamed up with her? None other than Naomi. So that's going to be interesting. And I like that this episode's title being The Other Woman. It implies in many different regards. We'll kind of break it. Well, I'll go ahead and break it down. Obviously, there's a whole complicated relationship between Dex and Naomi because of the whole Benny situation. And so in the entire episode, she's like, I didn't try to steal Benny from you. He kind of came there of his own volition. Like, if I knew he was going to come here, I would. But Naomi's not willing to listen. It's like, it's still on you, obviously. Like, Dex is just kind of like every like punch Naomi sends her way, she kind of has to take it. So then there was like this council meeting, and there's their suspect Lee. It's like, oh, I called the phone, but like Naomi's like, oh, it could be anything, so you didn't want to listen. And I love her being like, give me some popcorn or maybe some whiskey, maybe some headphones, so I don't have to hear all of this, you know. But it was interesting. I thought it was really neat when Naomi was there listening to Dex talk to Lee, because it's like, okay, I get it, Lee. You don't agree with everything that Sulin is doing. And he was bringing up some points, which, you know, and she brought up something I thought was kind of fascinating. We got a little insight in onto Benny, because we learned that Benny didn't 100% agree with the way his mom handled things. Like, the fact of the matter, he's like, I get it. My mom wants to protect the tribe and everything, especially because Dex brings up some stuff that even, like, you had a look on Naomi's face like, whoa, wait, what? Like, when it came to the stuff about Benny and Sulin, it's like, Sulin is the way she is because of appearance and stuff that she went through when she was younger. And I think that's all what stems into her, you know, keeping everything in-house, why she wants to keep everything on the reservation. Because I think, you know, much like other people, she's kind of been screwed over. And the way Dex talked about it, like, some really effed up stuff happened to her. We didn't get into the context of it, but that's why Sulin is the way she does. She deals the way she does because of that. But because of that, she kind of has a vice grip on the reservation. And so she, in her inadvertent way of trying to protect it, even Benny agreed her way of doing things wasn't what was really best. You know, she was trying her best, but it wasn't really 100% the best for the reservation, you know, so, because there's so much money on the table that could be allocated more if she had taken in his deal and everything, so Lee kind of handled it on his own. What was interesting, though, is we find out Lee is Hollis's nephew, but regardless. But I think hearing all that stuff, Naomi's kind of looking like, because I think for her, that shows her how much Dex knows Sulin and Benny. Even if that was probably stuff Benny never shared with her. It's like, wait, you knew a side of Benny even I didn't know. I even love the sit down with Hollis, and he's just staring at his nephew, and he's like, I'm really sorry. And Dex is like, yeah, you probably want to just stop talking now. And he was like, and then he's like, I'm really sorry, Uncle. And then, like, she's like, yeah, he knows you are, kid. I just love her little ad-libs there. But obviously they're going to try and keep this out of, you know, Sulin from finding out that he was at least the person making the dealings and whatnot. Especially considering the fact is that Hollis is her right-hand man, so it's like his own family's the one. It complicates things. But Naomi promises not to say anything either. But she goes and visited Benny's grave. And like I said, it was just this heartfelt moment of, I think even she, because for her, she's been spiraling for the past 12 years, you know, because, you know, she started blaming herself with Dex. It's like, you don't want to go down that route. You start spiraling, which she was like, I've been spiraling this entire time. Because for her, she started realizing, like, the fact of the matter is, I've been in love with Benny for so long. She's like, since I first met him when I was 6, and it just grew and grew. And until the day he noticed me, and I was like, I knew one day I'd marry him, and it did. But the whole complicated thing is that Benny was kind of torn between what his mom wanted for him and what he wanted for himself. And she even recognized, like, what Benny wanted is something because I was so blinded by my love for him and me being so in love with him and having been so for so long, she didn't really get to know what he wanted, you know. So like I said, Dex, knowing that side of him, knowing that even he disagreed with how his mom ran things, knowing that he had that insight, I don't think that was something she was really aware of. But it's also, he wanted to be with you. And it turns out, before Benny ended up leaving, she kicked him out because all he did, blasting Pearl Jam, which we see, I guess that's a habit that they gained together, or maybe it's just a habit she has that Benny ended up adopting, or maybe she adopted it from Benny. And like, either way, the fact is, when they're depressed and when they're moping, that's their go-to. And it turns out, like, he was staring at pictures of her, which obviously Naomi was pissed about. She kicked him out. And for her, it's like, his death was on me, because I kicked him out, you know? she's like, maybe if I like recognize this sooner and let him just go off and be with you, maybe things would be different. But obviously Dex isn't trying to punish Naomi. She's like, no, the fact of the matter is I can't tell you everything, but the fact of the matter is there were things that went down that about Benny's death, but it had nothing to, it wasn't because of you, so don't even think like that. So I thought that was kind of, pretty nice. But we found out like another element to this episode is actually it was an interesting element where it's like, was it disavowalment? It's basically when they kick you out of the tribe, and Su Lin had done that to a couple people, and it's like, whoa, you're only telling me this now because it's like, okay, so Su Lin is basically deciding who can come and stay in the tribe and everything. So it looks like a situation of, it's like, oh, like, because for her, it's like, oh, she gets to dictate, because obviously Dex takes that personally too, the whole disavowalment thing, because it's like, she gets to decide who gets to stay or who gets kicked out of the tribe. Because I'm sure that conversation probably came up all those years ago when it came to Benny and Dex. It's probably a thing of like, if you are with her, not only will you will lose ties to this, to the reservation. What most likely probably ended up happening was that maybe she came and visited Dex and be like, oh, you should do the right thing, leave Benny behind, or he's gonna lose his entire, maybe Dex started thinking that herself, and so she broke things off with Benny, cut all ties with him, so there's that whole situation. And then so this whole disavowalment situation, hits home a little hard for her. But then we find out like it's only a select few people. It's not like a big thing that she does of like, oh, you're not enough of this tribe to fit. It's nothing of that sort. She kicks out people who are kind of bad seeds, and it turns out the person behind all of this, his name is Russ. It turns out he got kicked out because he was selling drugs on a reservation, and like 2 or 3 people he sold them to died, and they were kids, so she ended up kicking him out. And for him, it's like, especially what's sad too is because those people were his friends. He's like, I was just giving them a hookup. Like I thought they were going to get these drugs from someone else anyway, so why don't I hook my friends up? And it's like they ended up dying. It's like, I didn't mean for that. Even like Su Lin's car exploding, he didn't mean that. He was just messing with her. He wasn't trying to kill her. It just it just went out of control, because they even said like the explosive was made by an amateur, so he didn't know what he was doing. He was just messing with her, trying to get back in her own way, because like for him it's like all he had was the tribe, and it was kind of taken away from him for a single mistake he made. So he's getting arrested for that. But Su Lin, like I was bringing up earlier with the whole Kavanaugh thing of her coming up and kind of getting we're not pressing charges and stuff like that, so they're bringing Russ back into the tribe and everything. And it's like, because even Dex was worried, like, what are you going to do? Which, Su Lin's kind of saying it's not going to be like that. The fact of the matter is, there's not going to be some, like, we don't have any, like, stables or something. So it's not like we're going to punish him or anything. It's just, because I think Su Lin can understand. Because for her, it's just, that was her knee-jerk reaction. Because, like, when she found out those kids died, it was just like, it's that thing of, like, when you're sad, you kind of lash out. So for her, she was angry, so she wanted to punish him. But obviously, she, it's that probably thing of, like, time later, cooler head kind of prevails of realizing, yeah, he made a mistake. So I shouldn't have punished him so harshly, basically taking this all away from him. So that was an interesting aspect to it. And what I like too is how this kind of blends in with the other side of the episode, where I talked about like the other woman. Obviously there's the whole thing between Dex and Naomi, but it also ties into Liz and Gray. Because part of me, I never thought about it, like Gray and Liz's situation, if you think about it, could technically be a reflection of the complicated thing that was the love triangle between Naomi, Dex, and Benny. That because obviously Dex has feelings for Gray. There was something there, but they put it off for so long. Obviously she had her one night stands, but it's the thing of Gray being with someone else, it being a solidified thing, like him being like, if he had a one night stand, sure, whatever, but the fact is she's been around a lot more. She's even cozying up to your brother. It makes it a little more serious and more permanent. Because it even seems like she even has reservations when it comes to the Hoffman thing. I think it's like, yeah, having fun is fun, but I think maybe she does like him, but it's really hard to tell. Because Hoffman was like, do you have feelings for Benny? Because she, last second, the moment she's like, yeah, also one more person to the list of people you need to look up for Su Lin. Oh yeah, some lady named Liz. I'm like, that's such an asshole thing to do, Dex. But, Hoffman ended up finding out, and he confronts her. It's like, I could go to jail for 5 years for something like that. And she's like, I'm so sorry. And he's like, are you doing this because you have feelings for Greg? She's like, no. It's because she was getting close to my brother and everything. It's like, and it's something of like, Because for Gray, it's like, you're my best friend, so you should spend more time with Liz. I don't want you kind of like, because obviously I like her a lot, and and how often can I say that? So I want my best friend and my girlfriend to kind of get together, to be on good terms and make me feel better. But the sad thing is, like, it's hard to say. I feel like it's there to a small degree, but obviously, like, I think the whole Benny situation still keeps. Obviously, it still keeps her from taking that full step, whether it is because she might have feelings for Gray, maybe she's pushing those back, maybe she feels something for Hoffman, but then there's a Gray that, like, I don't really know where Dex's heart lies in this whole situation. But she was about to bring up something. She was like, I was going to tell you something I haven't told anyone. The thing is, the reason why I'm doing all this wasn't because I wanted Sulin to love me. I wanted her forgiveness, because apparently there's more to the Benny thing. I think she didn't tell the whole truth, either in the sense that Benny died because either she did contact him or we get a small glimpse of his story. Either we must find out that the fact is that it might be a mission where it's like she ended up getting captured or something. Benny sacrificed himself coming to save her, or something. Like, I think there's a lot more of a story. I think we're going to have an entire episode dedicated to what really went down with Benny's death, because it makes it seem like, hey, he showed up last minute and then the vehicle was in, got hit. I think either he didn't actually die in that explosion and he died, like, it's like, no, he actually was okay, and then he died sometime later during some other event, or that event was a smaller event, a part of something much bigger. Whatever the case may be, there's still so much to that has to be unraveled. But before she could really bring it up, like, she sees Liz is there, and I think she kind of loses her want to be vulnerable, because it's like, right, like, I can't, it's like, because she wants to be vulnerable with Gray. If she's going to be vulnerable with anyone, it's going to be him, especially the history they have, but also because she cares so deeply for him like that. So I'm like, I don't know. I thought that was interesting. But we do see that in the ending, it's like, she brings along Liz to be her lucky charm. And it's like, oh, we're winning. It's like, yeah, they're celebrating. I'm like, okay, that's good. Liz and Dex are good. I mean, especially because it's like, well, Ansel definitely likes her and everything. So that's pretty dope. So, so it's like, obviously Dex needs to like her too. And then all of a sudden, it's like she wakes up, I'm like, in the bed, I'm like, oh, please don't tell me you did what. It's like, no, it can't. And she wakes up and Liz is next beside her naked. I'm like, are you serious? Oh, dude, this is the most complicated effed up situation ever. It's like, did you just sleep with your best friend who you might secretly be in love with? Did you sleep with his girlfriend? It's like, oh no. Which I'm like, no, the story, it's probably going to be like a hangover situation of like, as referencing as in the movies, of like, wait, what happened last night? Maybe neither one of them is 100% sure what happened. Or maybe it's going to be a thing of like, we should keep this secret. And it's like, that's a complicated mess Dex has found herself in, especially because Dex talks about the fact that she's a screw up, and it's like, now I've kind of screwed up my friend's relationship with that's a gnarly situation to find yourself in. It's probably like you got wasted, but I'm like, nah, I think we're gonna find out they never slept together. Maybe Dex is gonna sneak away because she thinks they did, as she's avoiding Liz like the plague, until Liz is like, no, we didn't sleep together. But it's like, well, I did wake up with you topless next to me, so it's like, ugh, that doesn't look good. So it's gonna be interesting to see ultimately where that ends up taking us going forward into the next episode. Like I said, that's a very nice, complicated twist that in the episode off on. So I'm pretty interested to see where that ultimately takes us going forward into the next episode. But really, that's all I wanted to talk about. Till next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.